back to this evening edition. This is the Daily Debate. For Israel and Iran, the World Economic Forum in Davos reached its peak today with speeches from Iranian President Hassan Rouhani and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But what is the real significance of the Economic Forum aside from speeches by world leaders? What concrete economic benefits emerge from it? And what does it mean for Israel and Iran, who have each faced harm to their economies from political decisions? And joining me tonight is Dr. Eldad Pardo. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you very much for coming. Iran expert at the Hebrew University and head of research at Impact.
Yeah,
that's enough. And Gilad Alper, senior analyst at Excellence Nesua Brokerage. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
So, are we maybe too naive by asking why money get down with politics?
Well, politics is about distributing money.
Yes,
so
of
that's
course.
first.
So we are naive.
Yeah, but basically, I think if we talk about Iran and to a certain extent Israel, this forum acquires, imparts a lot of legitimacy, which is badly needed, particularly for Iran. The Israeli situation is way better. But what Rouhani tried to achieve there is to show, okay, we are beyond the sanctions period, everything's okay, it's time to invest, we're a normal country, and let's do business.
Let's do business?
Right. Look, I mean, the meeting in Davos overall is much more than Iran. I mean, we're speaking about Iran here, but that's almost a sideshow. The real issue, I think, in Davos is, big business, politicians, economists, sitting together and trying supposedly to find ways to improve global economy. I think in practice what they usually do there is just network. It's a huge networking shindig. That's the main purpose of Davos. They do make a lot of declarations and they speak a lot about the economy, but I think most of the people there, almost all of them, benefit to a huge degree from the current system as it is. So I think the main purpose is just to stay or to leave things stable, so that they'll continue to benefit from the system.
So you're telling me basically what I'm always been told about this conference is that people are going and actually having good drinks and some good food and talking a little bit, and that's it.
Yes, I mean the real
Very
importance
worrying
of
what you said, that they prefer to keep the situation like it is now.
Yeah, actually I think they probably want to even make it worse because it's good for them and worse for almost everyone else. I think that basically they, as I said, benefit from the system, which is a lot of central planning, a lot of socialism, in my view anyway, and they're basically made to try and kind of just perpetuate the intellectual background or justification to the way things go. And I think that's what's going to continue, and that's why Davos is really interesting in that it gives you insight into what the current elite or the political elite, the intellectual elite, big business, what they think about the world and how the world needs to behave. And in that respect, it's interesting. In terms of any real change that one might hope that will come from this, I'm extremely pessimistic.
So he's pessimistic. Do you agree? Maybe Hassan Rouhani is just going for a nice chat with everyone and coming back with no big results?
Well, I don't think that for Iran it's that such a minor thing. First of all, it's the first time they are invited, and they put a lot of effort to show that they are back in business, that they normalize. The question is to what extent this is really correct, and there are also dangers inside. Even if the economy improves, this may lead to much more internal tensions, and then not the thing that they are expecting, and we see a lot of tension in Iran about that. Also, it's a question to what degree Iran really wants to open up to the world. We speak about lifting the sanctions. This is what they want. I believe that what Khamenei, at least, as long as he has the stamina and the power he would like to have, less of sanctions, keeping the nuclear infrastructure as he already secured for the coming years, in place. And then somehow continue with this centrally controlled country. You know, we hear about the world centrally controlled, but in Iran, Iran is among the least countries having free economy. They are, I think, one of the in the last 10 or something like that. So for Iran really to change is a major, major challenge, even not taking into account the sanctions whatsoever.
Before we will talk about the countries who are not invited to the meeting, I want to ask you, how can you explain the exchange stock today, the stock market today in Iran, that it went down in a very, very, let's say, sharp way?
I think the best explanation is probably they were waiting for much more than what had happened during the meeting in Davos. Maybe they were waiting for more concrete declarations about Iran, achieving something in terms of opening the business with the West. So I think that's the best explanation, just expectations that didn't come true.
So if the politics mixed with money, maybe somebody is putting their hands somewhere where they shouldn't?
Well, there were also a number of tough declarations from the United States, and Iran in the end was not invited into Geneva II talks. This was a change, and anyway, this hype in Iran stock exchange was basically based on hopes. Now that we come to the real business of fixing the economy, it is a very challenging project. One has to remember that even the sanctions in the worst situation had also some positive impact into the Iranian economy. For example, the high inflation, everybody was talking about the high inflation, allowed Iran to export much more. Just one example, to Iraq alone, it exported in 1 year $5.6 billion of merchandise, because when you have high inflation, you can export very easily. So the changes are difficult. There are a lot of vested interests, monopolies, and also the oil market. In December, they exported about the same as in November. On 24th of November, they signed this agreement. So it's not an easy thing to run any country, but Iran in particular is a very difficult country to handle.
How do you fix a country like Iran?
I think the only way to fix it is to change the regime from central planning, from a dictatorship or even a totalitarian regime to some extent, to a free economy, which will never happen, by the way. It's all just talk. But and by the way, it's true for any economy. If you want to improve any economy, whether it's Iran or Israel, the way to do it is more free markets, more competition, more capitalism, less government, less intervention, less central planning, less socialism, less taxes, and so on. There's a very long list.
Yes.
But look, this recipe works with every country, every time over the last 200 years. It could also work with Iran, but obviously they have a different agenda. So
what does it mean when you are not invited to Davos?
Well,
because it's a big prestige for Iran.
Yeah, for the first time.
For the first time. So I believe that they really wanted it. And when you're kept out, it's like the boy who is not in the game.
Yeah, I guess it's a bit of it's a bit of a disappointment. But look, I mean, for everyone who wants to do business and to have a thriving economy, Davos is not necessarily the way to do it. For any country who wants to do it, again, you just go the way of capitalism and free markets, and it solves all of your problems. For a country like Iran, the issue obviously is economics, but it's much more just the regime. So I guess for them to start fixing themselves, they need to start fixing the regime, which means a regime change, which is probably beyond the scope of this discussion. But I don't see them fixing their own economy before they actually do that. You need to have some kind of freedom in a society to allow for the economy to develop. Iran, and you're obviously a bigger expert than I am on Iran, but Iran is mainly just on crude oil and natural gas. There's very little industry, very little real economy, but correct me if I'm wrong. Wow. And the way for a country like Iran, especially if you think enough, in the future, when the oil is going to dry out, they need to develop something else, which is, of course, not something they're doing now, not at least as far as I know.
Is this the only solution to change the regime? Because we saw that it's not working in the Arab world, for example.
They seem to change to the wrong regime. Yeah. I mean, you can always change even worse. That's always possible.
And it's a process that takes time.
Well, in Iran, the regime is comparatively more open, even though it's totalitarian in the sense that you can't have, you can open a bottle of wine at home and the police will come, and But apart from that, look, non-oil exports, for example, reached 60% of the imports last year. They have a very big car industry. That's why we heard about Renault and Peugeot investing. Germany, for example, sends them a lot of spare parts for the industry. Still, there are other problems like pollution, car parts, airplanes falling from the air, tires exploding because they have to import the worst and the worst. But there are potential. For example, a research that we've done showed that in the field of nanotechnology, for example, around the year 2000 or so, Iran had the opportunity. They were on the springboard. They could become a world leader there. But because of this rigidity, they failed. They also spent, according to one estimate, around $200 billion on this nuclear project and, and sanctions and all that. And this is actually not a very useful technology. And, the Americans built the bomb already in 1940. So, it's not future looking. Also, all these missiles and stuff. So there is a lot of pressure inside to change. The question is who is smarter or he is more powerful. Khamenei believed he can take advantage of Rouhani and all those reformists, let them smile to the world, bring some money, and then maybe throw them to prison, who knows. But they believe that he gets older and older, and maybe he will just wither and disappear, and then Iran will become the heaven they have in their imagination. So we have to wait and see.
If I give you the opportunity to sit down with Rouhani, he cannot change the regime, but you can suggest to him like a business plan. What is the first thing that you will suggest him?
Well, look, the truth is that you have some examples in the world of countries that are not complete democracies and still they do very well economically. Singapore and Hong Kong are fantastic examples. So I guess in theory, the only thing you need to tell him is that if I was his advisor, and that's not a position I'm aspiring to, is probably...
They have oil.
Yeah, they have oil, but obviously, or it seems so, not enough. They need to develop a real industry, even more than the industry that you mentioned so far. The way to do it probably, again, is my role as an advisor, if you still want to still be a dictatorship, you just need to keep political power, as in make sure we have only one party, make sure that the elections are not free, which is what they do anyway, but keep your hands off the economy. And that's possible, again, because they're doing it in Singapore and Hong Kong. So it's possible. It's possible for a government or for a country to be not free from a political standpoint, but be very free economically. Even in China, they're kind of moving slowly towards that kind of structure. Yeah. So my advice to him, for him would be to just don't meddle in the economy. Don't do anything. You still want to be a dictator because you're a lousy human being, so okay, keep political power, but don't touch the economy. And it could work.
I don't believe in Iran it can work. They don't have the Confucian philosophy of hardworking, obeying. This is an Islamic country. Islam is based on justice, and the Iranian educational system wants people to become good scientists, good artists, good poets. So they really educate for asking questions, for seeking justice. And they talk about it all the time, and they encourage also the girls to ask questions. And it's very difficult to encourage a girl or a boy to ask questions in science class and then not in politics. So we see it's bubbling. It's very individualistic. People don't necessarily trust each other. I don't think they can copy the Chinese, Singapore, Japan, all this.
They can try to get close to it. It's probably going to be better than what it is now.
Yeah, but it's good advice. But I think the only way for them to go is what they do is try to have the same system, but really make it milder and give up this stupid nuclear project that doesn't lead anywhere. Yeah, anyway, you can't use it.
Small studio from the Jaffa Port in Israel. Unfortunately, we cannot change the world. Maybe
who knows, they might
to try improve it a little.
Maybe tomorrow.
Gentlemen, thank you very
Iran
much. We're going for a small break, and then the I-24 News one-on-one. Don't go anywhere.